Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. Today I want to discuss covert influence campaigns supported by state-backed actors or non-state actors. When I say non-state actors, it could mean a terrorist group like ISIS or Al Qaeda. I don't know which other ones exist today. Of course, this discussion is relevant in the given the backdrop of the uh, fraud perpetrated by top senior CIA official David J. Rush. Of course, we've since learned that he fabricated not only his military history but also his educational credentials, but still made it all the way to be a top secret holder TSSCI and become a member of the senior executive service. The senior executive service, I've done a video discussing it. They are the highest officials in the U.S. federal government. They're mapped equivalent to generals, so they're the highest in the U.S. federal government. I've seen lower levels ex-CIA people who don't even know what a senior executive service is. So there was someone who called it a senior intelligence service, no, it's senior executive service. And she was talking about, oh, that his supervisor should have signed off something. So she didn't know what a senior executive service is. A senior executive service, they're like, like a general. A general may not have a supervisor. A general can be reporting directly to the US president or someone, and they run operations themselves. They can sign off on stuff. Yes, there are checks, right? Our institution, our government is created with checks. So I was in banking before I joined the government, for instance, before I became a federal civil servant. And you see, even in banking, we have something called like a second set of eyes, right, to counter check everything. It's just part of proper internal controls. Somebody else is checking you and not necessarily approving, but they're using their judgments to check to show that everything is kosher. There's no fraud. So the issue of, well, him having a supervisor or not, that was why he was able to create a fake program, right? So the issue is, how did he get in there first of all? And that's why I'm talking about covert influence campaigns. So covert influence campaigns, of course, this escalated, during the era of the Cold War. They still continue today. During the era of the Cold War, there was espionage between the US and USSR and their respective allies. The objective was not just to steal military secrets. So when we're talking about espionage, yes, we've heard of spies who've been convicted, like Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, who stole secrets on behalf of the USSR to help them build or develop their own atomic bomb programs, right? We've heard of many others like the Conrad spy ring, Clyde Lee Conrad, who was a sergeant, first class sergeant in the U.S. Army. There was many others stealing military secrets, right? Information. But that's not the only thing they do. They also engage in ideological subversion, because each side, right? Each side is trying to say, demonize the other side. For instance, the KGB spent time trying to engage in ideological subversion, right? To manipulate the American public through propaganda, false narratives, right? To try and say, well, to make that the American government is run by bad people, that the American government is immoral, right? That they're not moral, so that their people, so that the American public can turn against them, right? Yes, there are people who engage in those two tactics together. They sell military, they sell military information. There's spies who do that. But so many times those spies may have first of all been won over. Sometimes they're doing it for financial reasons, right? Spies like Aldrich Ames, right? He was doing it for money. He wanted more money. That's why he was selling, secrets to the KGB to the Soviets, right? Um, or Robert Hansen of the FBI, right? They wanted money. They're spies who do that. They're traitors, spies who do that, and sell military secrets, U.S. secrets, for money. There are others who do it for ideological reasons, right? Because they sympathize with America's enemies, America's opponents, or they view America as a bad nation, right? They've been convinced that America is a bad nation. There was a time during the Cold War in the 80s. I remember when I lived in Nigeria, there was information that used to be circulated that the US government, that the US military created HIV, right, to kill gay people and blacks, right? That, you know, and this was being circulated all over Africa. I mean, I remember, I used to get this information in Nigeria. I mean, it didn't persuade me that, that's, um, it didn't turn me against America or anything like that. But there are many people that ended up thinking America was really creating biological weapons to harm its own people, right? To harm its own citizens, right? Um, just like in the wake of the coronavirus, right? COVID, people think, there was talk that, COVID was created in a Chinese lab, right? In America, I remember I actually saw a TV clip in which Dan Rather, I think it was Dan Rather, which he was saying that, well, back in the day in the 80s, that um, the HIV virus was created by the U.S. military, U.S. Army in a lab in Maryland or something, and it turns out that was part of the covert influence campaigns conducted by the KGB, by the USSR, right, and their proxies, and this goes on. So the idea is to cause the population, the citizens of a nation, to end up being disaffected, to sow seeds of discord, disaffection against their government, and to end up, having political outcomes, influencing the politics, the politicians, influencing policy. Uh, so today you can see with the actions of this guy, um, David Rush, who was able to infiltrate, who was able to enter the CIA using false credentials, spend 17 years, rise to the top, right, of the CIA, and then create fake programs, and then embezzle funds, get the U.S. government, right, all the funds that the U.S. government has spends on its agencies, on government work, is taxpayer money. It's taxpayer funded. So here's a guy who's able to create fake spy programs, right? He gets in there first of all, using fake credentials, and then he's in there in the most sensitive area, right? Directorate of Science and Technology, creating fake special access programs, right? Ultra secret fake special access programs in which he's siphoning funds, U.S. government funds, $40 million, right? Just carting them off, putting them in his own home. Now, who could he have done it on behalf of a foreign government? It's possible, right? But one of the methods of covert influence campaigns is they eliminate visible, observable paper trail, right? So you don't know who's really sponsoring them. Um, as other CIA operatives have said, that he probably most likely had help, right? There are other actors who would have signed off, instead of doing the proper vetting. Because I read the affidavit by the FBI, in the courts against him. He provided at different times of his applications to the CIA. He'd been applying for a number of, for several times, and then when he eventually applied to become a member of the senior executive service, he was providing conflicting um, educational and military credentials. They were conflicting, and the people vetting should have caught it, right? And every time, by the way, anytime they're going through an application process, whether it's your SF-86, they go and confirm with the schools, right? I hold a top secret TSSCI. I've gone through that process, right? They go and do all these verifications with the schools. They're supposed to do that, right? They're supposed to verify wherever you went, who your employer. They're supposed to verify. I look, people I didn't expect when I got into the McCain Fellowship. I did not even expect. They just told me, oh, that they called them, government called them. My roommates that I had ages ago, my roommates, my neighbors, they called people. They go and ask people, the people I worked with ages ago. They go and because so they do a thorough background check. They go and check your credentials, your transcripts, not just you providing them forged, documents that they take it as valid. No, they go to the schools and verify. That's what they're supposed to do. So they definitely had people, right? They had people in the vetting process that were helping this guy, right? And why would they have done that? Because the effect of what he's done, that's David Rush. The effect is to cause Americans to be like, wow, so the CIA, people can easily get into the CIA. The vetting system is flawed, tremendously flawed, and we don't give credence. We don't believe in the rigor of the vetting process of the government of the CIA anymore. As a result, Americans will start to believe that, well, they're government officials that are just carting away millions of dollars for their personal use, deceiving the American people. Just what covert influence campaigns are designed for, right? They provide, they can concoct not just fake news and propaganda like the HIV scare, but also they try and get Americans to lose confidence in their government, to think their government is not just to think their government is not moral, but to think that there's no, the government agencies are designed to just spoof them, to steal from them, and they're not useful, right? There've been many people calling for the CIA to be scrapped. Prior to this incident, they would say, well, the CIA should be scrapped. It serves no useful purpose. It's immoral. The things it does, it runs campaigns against American citizens. Now they've just given them ammunition, right, with this David Rush fraud, right? They've just given them something to buttress their argument, their calls for dissolving the CIA or whatever. People who are nihilists, who hate the government, anarchists. You've just given them, fodder. You've just given them fuel, for their agitation. So that's part of what covert influence campaigns are designed to do. It's not that the U.S. doesn't do these propaganda wars against its enemies as well. The CIA does. The U.S. does it as well. The U.S. Intelligence agencies, they engage in propaganda wars as well against their enemies. They did it during the Second World War, the First World War. The British are masters in it. And talking about, the lack of observable paper trail to the sponsors of this covert influence campaigns. It could be one outfit, right, that's sponsoring them, and it turns out that maybe they're doing it for another state actor. An example is the case of Jonathan Pollard. Jonathan Pollard was an American-born Israeli, right? And he went to Stanford. He tried very hard to get into the CIA. He failed. He didn't pass their vetting system, but he eventually got into the Navy and got into naval intelligence. And there he started to sell secrets to the Israelis, to the Mossad, to the Israelis. Initially he got $31,000 to get documents, top secret documents, sensitive documents, and then he was promised over $300,000 more. Now it turns out that even though it was the Israelis he sold this information to, right? He sold U.S. war plans, military plans, and strategy against the USSR, right? You think, what does the Israeli government need that sort of information for? Well, maybe it's just, to have more information, just to know, because these even allies, because the Mossad are allies of the CIA, the Israelis are allies of the United States. But however, it turns out that the intelligence that Pollard stole from the United States and sold off to the Israelis ended up being sent over to the KGB, to the USSR. So the USSR had plans of, uh, you know, military plan, the United States military plans against its armies, right? In the event of war. So it appears like it's one thing, right? One state actor that's backing a spy, a traitor, and it turns out that they're really selling them out to another state actor or a non-state actor. So in the world of espionage, again, espionage is illegal. There's a lot of treachery. There's a lot of uh, there's smoke and mirrors. It's just a kaleidoscope of lies, subterfuge, and straw men. So that's the nature of covert influence campaigns. But without a doubt, uh, the infiltration of the CIA, of the US government, all the way to the top level of senior executive service by David Rush, who was on the President Trump's intelligence advisory board. He was a liaison as well to the Department of Defense, working on a top secret nuclear program. It will sow the seeds of disaffection amongst the American public. Amongst, what about even professionals working there, people who worked hard in the CIA, who worked out in the government, realizing that, my God, so this guy who didn't have any qualifications was able to just infiltrate, penetrate, rise all the way to the top, and he was not even loyal, and he was even stealing money. And it creates not so much jealousy or envy, but again, disaffection, right? It creates negative feelings, right, amongst not just the American public, but loyal American citizens, right? You start to question your government, and how did it happen? So obviously the US government, the investigators, the FBI, they're going to have to dig deep and unravel the mystery. It's not mysterious. The people are there. Those who vetted him, there's a paper trail. Those people have to going to be arrested and investigated, interrogated, and eventually they're going to be able to smoke out the actual backers. I don't think this guy is a random guy who just pulled a solo Houdini or solo Frank Abagnale. No. Frank Abagnale, by the way, is from Catch Me If You Can. This guy was doing all his impersonation and con artist work on his own. A lot of it embellished, by the way, from his autobiography. But that's not the situation with David Rush, because he was operating in an ultra sensitive, top secret environment. The U.S. government, no joke, right? It's the CIA. So he had actors, right, malign actors. They're insider threats. They're in the U.S. government, and I can easily see it. I understand, because the fraud started from the Navy. In fact, I'll do another video and just discuss his falsified credentials. Because in this video, I just wanted to discuss the covert influence campaigns and its strategy to sow discord and disaffection amongst the populace, to make the populace lose trust in their government, and their national institutions, right? People might not like the CIA, but people had this awe about the CIA that they're masters of information, masters of intelligence, and that you can't pull, that their only rivals are the KGB, which is no more, and they people say, I would even say the Mossad, which is interesting. One wonders what is the role of the Mossad, right? Again, the Jonathan Pollard's situation, right, where he was selling U.S. military secrets to the Mossad. I think it was to the Israelis, so I assume it was to the Mossad. What is their role? The United States has to be very careful, right, regarding all foreign intelligence, right? Because they just get into the habit, into the business of subversion, right? And yes, America has allies. There's the Five Eyes, right? That the United States works with and they collaborate with. But at the same time, the United States has to be very cautious and vigilant about being infiltrated, right? Infiltration and exfiltration. That's a threat that the United States intelligence, our government, still faces against, all foreign adversaries and allies, right? Again, they know in the world of real politics, there are no permanent allies, there are no permanent enemies, right? So America started off being an enemy of Britain, and France being our allies. That's switched, right? France is they are allies today, but as we say, our strongest allies are Great Britain, right? In any event, I'll keep this short. I'll stop this here, and I'll continue with subsequent videos. I hope this was a good explanation of covert influence campaigns, which are designed to sow the seeds of discord and disaffection for our government, and enhance nihilism. And nihilists, use it as a tool, right? And by the way, none of this is classified information. This is all out in the public domain. My name is Olurotimi Osha, and I'll keep you posted. Thank you.